A time-phased product structure diagram is actually a specialized form of a Gantt chart. Gantt charts crop up in a lot of different settings. They're essentially bar charts that illustrate timing. Now the setting here with Main House Gaming is material requirements planning. So what is the issue of illustrating timing? Well, you can see it in the data here. Let's look. Main House Gaming estimates that the 11 distinct items listed in the ERG, that's the Environmental Response Game Bill of Materials, have different fixed lead times. This is what I mean by timing. Okay, no, wait a minute, back out for a second. Not just Main House Gaming, which has been going on in the scenario before this one. All of material requirements planning. Material requirements planning holds that each item inside a complex finished good, each item has a lead time. You can see that's actually just what I highlighted in colored ink, that for the, what was the finished good? For the environmental response game, there are a wide variety of component items. Each one of them, if you needed more of that item, there is a certain fixed amount of time that you would have to wait until you received it. And you can see that it varies. This is the difficulty for the different items. I see everything here from 1 day to 7 days. Now, it's asking down below and providing a grid, how would this information appear as a time-phased product structure diagram? Oh, okay. Now, getting back to Gantt charting in essence, let's talk just about drawing a time-phased product structure diagram. Tips for drawing a time-phased product structure diagram. First off, you need a timeline. You need some type of grid. That's why there's one that's pre-printed here in this particular note page. Now the intention is, for this particular problem, is that each column is a day. Because in any Gantt chart, typically the horizontal axis is the timeline, and so you're illustrating things happening over time, so you need that scale. What is the scale across the horizontal axis? So for this grid, and for this particular problem, the most helpful way to do it is let each column be 1 day. Okay, fine. Now, we want to create this thing from all this information on the page called a time-phased product structure diagram. What do we do next? Find the finished good. Find the good that has no parent, because if you have a bill of materials and they say, look at all this information about the ERG bill of materials, then somewhere on there's reference to the absolute finished good. What is it that we are building? And that would be marked as an item that has, by definition, no parent item. Now, this particular note frame doesn't include the parent-child relationships between this list of 11 items. But even if we had not acquainted ourselves with the assembly of an environmental response game in the scenario before, you can kind of figure it out just by looking at this list. I'm looking at the top here, the very, very top of the list, and it says ERG 001, right? That's their code for the item finished unit of sale. The lead time is 1 day. If you need one more unit of this finished unit of sale, that will be a day. And it even says over here, lead time description, why are you waiting, final game assembly. Oh, I'm pretty sure that's the finished good. Yes, and actually it is. If you want to check me on that by reviewing the scenario before. You say, okay, fine, I found it. It's at the top of the list. The finished good is ERG 001. We want to draw that. We want to draw that. Now, in particular, it's the timing that we're fascinated with, right? And we say, if you need one finished good of this type, the lead time is 1 day. You make a request 1 day later, it will be ready. Now, interesting enough with MRP, if you need 5 units of this finished good, make a request and 1 day later they'll be ready. If you need 500 units of this finished good, make a request and 1 day later they'll be ready. In MRP we assume that lead times are constant and independent of order size. Anyway, that's why we can get away with this. We say we're going to illustrate the activity of producing these games. I don't really need to know how many of them in total we're going to make, because I'm going to book a day for final assembly. I'm going to book a day for final assembly. This really gets the actual diagram started. You want to be over to the right. You're basically going to build or generate this illustration from the right, working back towards the left. This is our timeline. Through here. You say, all right, over to the right. And you know, you could freehand draw this basically any way that you're comfortable. But, let me think. I have seen this movie before. I know how it ends. It would be good to place the one final day of assembly for ERG001, 4th row from the bottom. Why? Oh, because it leaves the most room later for your other work. But like I said, you freehand draw it. It'll turn out fine anyway. Okay, so what I've done is I've booked 1 day that represents this. The lead time on waiting for final assembly. Okay, now actually, let's see, I can put the label in over here as well. This is not a requirement of a time-phase product structure diagram. It's just going to help me keep track of who I have and haven't done. Right, because our product structure diagram is finished when we have illustrated each one of those lead times that's listed. We've only done one so far. Okay, so what do we do next? Now, going back to lead times in MRP, they're constant and independent of order size. Yes. They also assume that when you make the request for the item that you need, all of the children are in stock at the moment that you make the request. Oh, so if you had made a request for 1 finished unit of sale of the environmental response game, it would be 1 day before you were actually handed the board game, as long as each of its 3 children are in stock. And you can check me on this by reviewing the scenario before, or you can take my word on it that these next 3 items are the children of ERG001. Because what are they? The ERG packed set, that's all the insides of the game. Okay, 2 standard die cubes and the actual, it says branded game box, the actual game box that everything is packed in. Oh, so that lead time of 1 day is basically the amount of time that we are reserving for taking the box, the finished box, that's 1 child, grabbing the packed set, okay, that's another child, putting it in the box, throwing the dice in there as well, closing and sealing the box. This means that if we don't have a packed set, we don't have a branded box, and we don't happen to have any dice chasing around, we're going to have to make sure that we order them in time, that they are in place when we place the request for the finished good. Okay, now wait, relate that back to the diagram. Here's us assembling the finished good. Okay, so this point in time, because remember the lines are distinct points in time, this point in time right here happens to be when we ask for final assembly to start. If we don't have, for instance, I'm just going to pick the dice because they have such a long lead time. If we don't have any of those in stock, what is that? That's such a long lead time, 7 days. We had better book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days prior. I am illustrating the lead time on the standard die cubes, or the dice that are packed in the game. It says 7 days. I booked 7 days here. I booked 7 days here, and let me note that, in case I'm trying to figure out later what that is, General 06, that's the code for the dice. Oh, okay, so one of the things I've discovered is if I want to be assembling the game here and I don't have any dice, I need to order the dice here, because remember that the lines here are distinct points in time. All right, anyway, that means that that one's done. The other 2 children should also be added. The packed set, it doesn't take very long to assemble a packed set, but nonetheless, we should book that time. 1 day is that lead time. Each column's a day, so I say, all right, well, this here, from start to finish, is us assembling the packed set, and I'm going to label that. You could label it here. You could label right on there if you wanted to. There's no strict rules on this. I'm just going to use this column over here to the right. That's ERG 101, the packed set. And then we have one other child item we need to book the lead time for, 2 days. All right, I'm going to put it way down here again because I've seen this movie before and I know how it ends. I want to leave some room for stuff that's coming later, but it doesn't really matter where you put it as long as it ends here, the 2 days that you're booking, and it's 2 days long, so that it starts here on the timeline. That is the branded box, ERG, right? If I got the label right, yes, ERG 102. Okay. Now, I have 4 out of the 11 items on the diagram. See the pattern? I just keep going. I just keep going by asking myself, okay, fine, of what I just drew now, which is 3 things, do they have any children? Because if they have children, it's time to add them to the diagram. Now, across the top of my diagram, that big long stretch of 7 days, that's the lead time on the standard dice. And that is, and we can see that up also in the list, the delay is described as procurement. Yes, and if you want to review the scenario before, there are no ingredients for dice. That's apparently something that we buy from somebody else. Oh, which is to say there's no children, so there's nothing more that branches to the left of that particular part of the diagram. But if you look at ERG 101, the packed set, and you want to review the story before, right, the packed set of all the stuff that goes in the box, other than the standard dice, the actual stuff that is specific to the environmental response game, is actually pretty complicated. It's got a couple component items. Oh, it has several children. As a matter of fact, ERG 101, which is right now just that little short thing right there, it is relying on the presence of 3 children. Those 3 children are actually on this list, the next 3 items. ERG 201, the card set, ERG 202, the actual playing board, and ERG 203, the game piece packet. Okay, these are all children of the packed set. Oh, okay, meaning that over here, this 5 days, this 4 days, and this 3 days, they need to be added to the diagram so that they conclude before assembly of the packed game starts. All right, no problem. We'll just draw some more branches. For instance, the card set. Okay, we've got a nice gap in here. I think I'm going to put it in here. The card set has a lead time of 5 days. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm backing up in time. 5 days. This is how long you would wait for ERG 201, the card set. Okay, so that one's done. Then there are 2 others. Let's see, ERG 202, the lead time is 4 days. We want to leave a little bit of room here. leave 2 rows as a gap. 1, 2, 3, 4, but back up 4 days. This is backing up from when we request the packed set, how long we would wait for ERG 202, the actual playing board. And then, let's see, the third child item, ERG 203, the actual playing piece packet. Skip a line, just so it comes out looking nice. 1, 2, 3. It has the shortest lead time. Oh, I can make that a little thicker. Here's when we'd have to order the playing piece packet in order for it to be ready in time to go into the actual packed insert, in time for that to go into the finished good. Oh, I better label that. That was ERG 203. Okay. So, we have 4 more to go. We have 4 more to go. We just have to figure out, okay, fine, well, who are they the children of? And if you review the scenario before, actually the parent-child relationships were provided in that scenario. If you were deprived of that scenario, at least here at the bottom of the list, you could probably just use logic and figure out who these particular items are children of. Because look at the first 2, standard game box and ERG box decal. They're both things that go into a box. Yes, they're both children of the finished game box. Oh, so we can do those 2 next, because the finished game box apparently consists of a standard cardboard game box and then a printed decal that's typically layered over the standard box. All right. Now, wait a minute. Which one was the standard box? Standard game box. Oh, that's 102. I'd drawn it down here. Fine. It has 2 children. It has 2 children. The standard game box, the lead time is 5 days. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So backing up from when we start creating the branded game box, we better order the standard game box. And then, let's see, 3 days for the box decal, and it says procurement, so apparently somebody prints that for us, and we just order it up from them if we're Main House Gaming. Anyway, we must wait 3 days for their work to arrive, so we'll book in those 3 days. Just a reminder to myself, this one right here was APR 25, standard paper item. Oops, no, not 25, excuse me, 01. Whoopsie, PAPR 01. And this one is ERG 204. Okay, the box decal. Oh, hey, I think we're closing in on this, because there's only 2 other things left on the list, and again, you could use logic and just figure out who they must be the children of. It says standard foldable playing board and ERG board laminate top. This is similar to the box. Apparently they make, see up here, the branded game board. They make the branded game board from, or not the branded game, playing board, excuse me, circled the wrong one. The playing board from those 2 component items. Very similar to the box. The box is made from a standard item in which there is a printed specialized decal layered on top, and then apparently the game board, same thing. The finished game board is a standard game board with the printed laminate top on top of it. Okay, anyway, to finish this diagram we have to add those 2 other lead times, because they're both 3 days. They're both 3 days, so first off, kind of like when I was circling, you have to locate the parent. Okay, that's the playing board, that's 202. That's what I drew right here. Okay, so here's assembly of the playing board, but the 2 children need to be ready when we make the request to assemble the playing board. So those 3-day lead times at the bottom of our list have to be squeezed in right here. You have to back up 3 days from when lead time starts on the branded game board to give yourself enough time to order. That's right, so this one is PAPR25, and then this one is ERG301. Okay, now we have this diagram. This is a time-phase product structure diagram. You say, okay, great, now I know how to draw one. What good was it anyway? I mean, like, what's it for? All right, it's illustrating, if you need to make one of these environmental response games up from scratch, it is illustrating the timing associated with procuring all those different items, including, notice that if you don't have any inventory in stock right now and somebody says, quick, make me an environmental response game, the first thing that you have to do, and how would you interpret this diagram? The first thing that you would have to do is order the 2 components for the playing board, because they are the 2 bars that are the farthest to the left. Okay, good to know. Well, we better put in an order for standard playing boards and those laminate tops right away. Oh, now, notice that there's another question snuck in at the bottom of this note frame, which is kind of also along the lines of, okay, well, why do I care? What am I supposed to do with this diagram? It says, what is the overall time required to produce the environmental response game if Main House Gaming has nothing in inventory? This is generally also what we're trying to explore when we bother to draw a product structure diagram, time-phased product structure diagram. Oh, well, you said, okay, I don't see it. Well, how is it telling me that? Once you've finished the product structure diagram, that is to say, you have all the lead times on the diagram correctly positioned behind their parents, you know, to the left, okay. Then, here's what you do. Speaking of that standard playing board and the laminate top, any product structure diagram, look for the leftmost point, okay. Look for the lead times that are sticking out to the farthest to the left and look where they start. You say, okay, fine, found it. Label that 0 on the timeline. Make that a point, that moment right now, then start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, and why did I stop here? Not because I ran out of grid, actually. I numbered until I came to the very end of the diagram. Here is us in time actually finishing the environmental response game. Oh, there's our answer. The time-phase product structure diagram reveals the answer, that if you have nothing on hand right now and you need one of these games, or ironically 500 of these games, it doesn't matter. You need to place an order for the standard playing board and for the laminate playing board tops immediately. 9 days later, if you do everything else correctly, 9 days later you will have finished the actual environmental response game.